Oh man, it's almost the end of 2022. And as we go into 2023, I'm thinking, gosh, we're getting further and further away from 2020. And when it seemed like everything changed for so many of us. And one of my friends was asking me the other day, I think she was speaking to what a lot of people experienced in 2020, how it was really an awakening of what they really want in life and how it allowed them to spend a lot of time with themselves. And it was a little different for me because I really had that opportunity for several years before 2020. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I really didn't have that opportunity. And really, it was a blessing in some ways because I went on staff with the company that I work with. And had I not been hired on staff because I was a freelance writer, then in those early months of the pandemic, I don't know what I would have done because I would have had really very, very, very limited income. So that was a blessing. But what a lot of people got to experience at that time to themselves, I got that. I should say I was alone. I was alone in terms of my lifestyle, but just my time being my own, I didn't really get. But the meaning of that time for me, I feel, is becoming more and more and more clear to me, especially during the end of this year, 2022. I think for me, I had some difficult times over these last few years, and it has been an opportunity for me to affirm me for me. And I have been challenged in different types of situations that I wasn't necessarily happy in, but they were opportunities for me to affirm myself. And I'm sure I can look back and think, oh, well, I didn't do a great job affirming myself, at this point or at this point. But the point is where I am now. And it's not always pretty how we get there. But I have to say that this year really just brought everything full circle for me. Earlier this year, my brother passed. He actually passed in January. This January, in just a few days, will be a year. That month will be a year since he passed. He passed later in the month of January. And very different experience for me because there's the loss of him and just someone who's been in my life my whole life is gone. And as well as he was the last of my immediate family. When my other brother passed away in 2014, my parents were already gone, and each loss has been so impactful. But when it was just me and my older brother, Russ, it just, I don't know. For me to have him when everyone else was gone, to still have him meant so much. And I'm still processing him being gone. We talked often. I mean, we usually talked at least once a week, sometimes more than that. But we didn't always talk in depth. But we always communicated our love for each other. And we always dealt with whatever situation might be going on in our family, or there might be some problem. We always talked about that. But we didn't talk about really deep emotional things relating to each of us. I used to talk to him a lot about my relationships and get his advice, but he was a person that was very guarded with his feelings. He didn't share a lot. And so I can be a person where if you're not sharing a lot, then I just let it go. So I'm saying that to say that with the other members of my family that I did have that deeper verbal communication with when it came to emotions, the grieving was more, I don't know how to describe it. It was more direct It was more of a boom. And then me trying to get through that grieving process. And with him, it's just been like, I've been stunned. I've felt shock. I've felt disbelief. I felt abandoned because he's gone. It's just been a process. It is still hard to believe that he's gone. But with him being gone and me being the youngest of us siblings, it has had me feel more empowered because I've had no choice but to be and stand in my power because he's gone. He's gone. That rock that I always had is gone. So, as I said, it's brought me into standing in my power. And I've been on that road, but this just pushed me. This just pushed me further out and further up, if that makes any sense. So there was that. And then later this year, not even that, a few months after he passed, somebody from my past came into my life, returned to my life, an old relationship. And that was somebody that really meant a lot to me. And I had a lot of love for, and I still have a lot of feelings for. But that relationship didn't work out. And as it was not working out, I was aware. I stayed in my feelings. I was aware that I wasn't happy. I was aware that I was frustrated, but I wasn't going to end it because he was going through a difficult time. And I wanted to see this through, even though I knew I wasn't happy. I wanted to see where this was going to go, and I did want it to work. Well, he broke it off. And when he broke it off, I was so upset. Oh my God. I was so upset. I mean, I accepted it, but after we finished our conversation in my own space, I just cried and cried. I cried, and I cried for 2 straight days, just a mess. And one of my girlfriends came over after another girlfriend said, check on her, because I wouldn't talk about what was wrong because I couldn't, because just thinking about it was making me really upset for so many reasons. This person, he reminded me of my brothers in some ways, and I was still grieving my brother Russ, and then here's another loss, and it's just so much stuff. And when my girlfriend came over, and she didn't know anything, she just knew something was going on with me, and she came over, and I'm just boo-hooing in her chest. I'm just like, laying on her shoulder and just crying and crying. And I know she was just so upset for me because she hadn't seen me like that. And, you can just feel me just crying from my gut and just getting it all out as far as this person was concerned. And by the 3rd day, I was better in terms of, I did cry the 3rd day, but it wasn't a case where I thought about it and I instantly cried. I cried less on the 3rd day, and then I cried less on the 4th day, and then on the 5th day, didn't cry at all. But that thing that happened with this person, it was another boost for me to really stand in my power, to really accept the truth about what was going on in that situation, brief as it was, in terms of him returning to my life. And it brought back the reality, the knowing of what happiness and contentment and support and love is really about. And it just really helped me, not getting what I want out of a situation and loss in terms of death. It's helped me to realize in my sadness how short life is, what love should look like, and then I am love. And that's true for all of us. Whoever is looking at this or listening to this, it is true for you too. You are love. And I believe that we would just be in such a better place in this world if we stood in who we are, in love, in kindness, not in trying to hurt anybody else. And I say this, well, before I get to what I was just thinking about a second ago, I was also telling a friend that I can feel like it's a little cliche when we have a word for the year. And I did have words for 2022. My words were love and healing. Those were 2 words I had for 2022. And this year I have a phrase, and things are coming to me. That's why I'm pausing, because if there is a word for 2023, one of the words would be wholeness. I am so about wholeness and what wholeness looks like for me, and being on a consistent path to wholeness for me and my spirit. And if something doesn't look like wholeness, then there's something that I need to address, and I want to address it. But really, my phrase for 2023 is to trust in who I am. Trust in who I am. And I know who I am. I know who I am. And feeling empowered around that is because of experiences in 2022 and my journey leading up to 2022 and the losses and navigating my mindset around the loss of my brother. And just, as I said, the final member of my immediate family, other than myself. So I really have been thinking a lot about energy. I always think about energy because I'm so sensitive to energy, and something that's been on my mind, and I'm sorry that I don't have this author's name in front of me. I want to say her name is Jill Bolte, and I really could have her name wrong, but she wrote a book. She's a scientist and neuroscientist, I believe, and she wrote this book in the 90s called My Stroke of Insight, and it was about her experience of having a stroke. And she was on Oprah around that time that she wrote her book, and I just will never forget it, and it's really been on my spirit lately. First, she went into how she had her stroke and she didn't know what it was. She was at home in her home office. She just knew something was wrong with her. She was on the floor and trying to figure out how she could get help. And she was alone in the house. And she managed to make a phone call by looking at her Rolodex. And remember those? And matching the squiggly of the numbers, because she didn't recognize numbers as numbers or names as names. Things were just familiar to her. So she called someone. They couldn't understand her, but they knew she was in trouble, and they got her medical help. And then when she was in the hospital, she couldn't talk, if I remember correctly, at first. And her mother was sort of her gatekeeper, her advocate at the hospital. And her mother was very sensitive to the energy and how she would respond to different people, how her daughter would respond to different people who would come into the room, and whether they brought in negative energy or anything she could tell in her daughter, how she was affected. That was when she realized, the author of this book, how important energy is, and, you know, what we bring to an environment. And it is so important that we bring our, that we check ourselves, that we check our energy, and we're aware of what we bring to other people into situations. And Wayne Dyer, if you listen to Wayne Dyer and you know that the late Wayne Dyer, and in his talks, he would repeat some of the same stories or metaphors from time to time. And one of them was, when you squeeze orange juice, what comes out? What comes out when you, I'm saying that wrong. What comes out when you squeeze an orange? The thought is orange juice, of course, but what comes out is what's inside. That's what comes out. And so the question is, what's inside of us? What are we bringing out and sharing with the world and with other people, in our lives? And what do we want to convey? And sometimes we have to have the hard conversations. And I definitely feel that in this year, there are going to be moments this coming year that I'm going to have the hard conversations that they don't have to take 30 minutes or an hour or 15 minutes. It can be 2 or 3 minutes. It could be 30 seconds. But having to be frank with someone and letting them know what's what, and okay, you've crossed a line, is important. Doesn't mean that we have to say that in hate. Directness does not have to be hateful, but sometimes we have to have the hard conversations. My point is, I believe that it is important for us to remember the love inside us. And that love is the Spirit of God. For me, God is love and nothing else. God is love. And that's what's inside of us. And what we can do sometimes is put the layers of the world that is not of God, of this mess that we've created, on top of what is really inside of us, which is love. So, Happy New Year. Happy 2023. There's so many things that I wanted to share that I'm just forgetting, and I didn't write it all down because I wanted to really get this out here. But the main things I think I have shared. I wanted to share just what a journey this year has been. And sometimes I can feel like I'm getting nowhere, or this is so hard. And I can forget the work that I'm really doing inside. And I think that can be true for all of us sometimes, where we really can forget, or not realize that as long as we keep trying to work forward, and as long as we are honest with ourselves about what's going on and how we feel about what's going on, then we're moving forward. And sometimes we don't realize it until the next day or the next week, or until we come through it and we say, oh God, yeah. Back then I thought I was, stuck in place, but I was really doing some internal work. One thing that I have realized, and I'm realizing it more and more, I remember this also when my mom was in her last months, but it is so amazing to me, the work that God does when we're at rest. Because sometimes I might feel that I'm having a really bad day and I'm not looking forward to the next day, but I go to sleep. And when I wake up, what I thought was negative energy the day before that I feel in my spirit, it's gone. I feel a healing. And I attribute that to the work of God. And I used to see that in real time with my mom. And it didn't have to do with anything going on in her spirit, but she had a heart condition. And I remember in her last months, she was living with me, and she was going through, she had like a bad spell of feeling really weak, and she ended up living another few months, but her heart was beating so forcefully that when she was asleep, sometimes it's like it would lift her body up. Her heart would beat and it would lift her body up off the pillow. And I was sleeping beside her in the bed, and I had the TV on, with the lights out, and I would just watch her because I wanted to make sure she continued breathing during the night. And it was scary to see how forcefully her heart was beating. And just over the course of a few hours, by the next morning, it had stopped. Her heart didn't stop beating. The forcefulness of it had eased. And she woke up and she was just feeling so much better. And I just attribute that to rest and the work of God and how God really can heal us. He really does the real work. I'm just trying to encourage us to stay on the path of what we know in love. And what we know in love is always going to be tied to God. All right. I'm done. There was more that I don't remember, but I wanted to make sure that I get this out. There is so much to come for Let's Start Healing in 2023. I cannot wait to share it with you. Happy New Year. Trust in who you are. And let's start healing.